Today, we're going to get a little vulnerable about mental health. I know so many of us have mental health challenges and we have ups and downs with our mental health. And I'm in this period of being able to sort of talk about some of my own challenges. So, we're going to get a little bit vulnerable today, talk about mental health, and then talk about ways that I've seen progress within my own mental health. And hopefully, help those of you guys who have also experienced mental health challenges to not feel so alone. So, welcome back to Wellness Fixes the Pod. I'm your host, Dr. Kelsey Vick, a board-certified orthopedic doctor of physical therapy and a pelvic floor physical therapist. And mental health, especially over the last 3 years, has been something that has been on my mind a lot. It has taken a lot of my own effort in order to get to the place that I am at right now. And we won't be going into specifics, but I just want to share some of the things that I felt when going through my own mental health struggles, and then also what I'm noticing now. My word of the year for 2025 is healing. Healing my brain, healing my mental health, my body, my physical self, how I feel psychologically, my relationships, healing in a variety of ways. And we are going through some exciting changes as a family, and something that I have been looking forward to for a very long time, but something that's also causing a little bit of anxiety. And so it's sort of been my first test after learning new tactics and tools throughout therapy and throughout the last 3 years going through my own mental health struggles, where I'm finally able to realize oh my gosh, Kelsey, all of that hard work is paying off right now. And I can see that in how I'm handling some of these just more anxious, more nerve-wracking struggles, even though it's for something that's very exciting for our family. I guess a little bit of a backstory on my own sort of growing up. I was always a very positive and optimistic person. I have always relied heavily on my faith. I've always been someone who turns to her faith and her relationship with God in order to help whenever she's struggling. Even way back in middle school and high school, Kelsey, dealing with boys' troubles and friend troubles and things that right now are something that are so far from my mind, but something that littler Kelsey was definitely struggling with. And I was always optimistic. I was always positive about it. And so I never really got into this deep mental health struggle where it was tough for me to climb back out of that hole. And I know many of you guys have been in that hole, and some way younger than me at, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, 13 years old, some in high school, some in college. I guess I feel very privileged to say mine happened later on in life, that I had a very easy time with my mental health, relatively speaking, when I was younger. And then it wasn't until about 3 years ago where something just shifted in my external circumstances that caused me to sort of spiral a little bit. And I finally understood what other people were talking about when they say they felt like they didn't necessarily have any more hope, or they couldn't feel fully happy, 100% happy. They didn't feel like themselves. They felt a shell of themselves. I have a really good friend who in PT school, she would tell me, she's like, I don't know how you guys stayed friends with me in PT school because I was a shell of myself. And I never truly understood that. I'd been through stresses in life. I'd been through grief and sadness and heartbreak and all of those things. But my faith, I think, helped me with that. And the strength of my relationship with God helped me with that, to realize that it was all working for the good in my life eventually, even if it was a momentary struggle. But over the last 3 years or so, I finally got to a point where there were times when I did not have that hope. I did not have that ability to see into the future and actually believe that something good was coming out of this. And that's a really scary place to be. And I know a lot of you guys have also been there and might still be there. And if you are in that position, I am not someone to discount that at all. I'm not someone who's going to invalidate that at all, because I have totally been there. It is a scary, scary place to be. And it's somewhere that I was for a very long time. And I'm going to, tell you guys what has helped me today to get out of that. But I totally expect myself to also have those struggles possibly again and again. But now I feel like I do have a better understanding of what got me into that position in the first place, and tools to help me if I am in that position, and then tools to hopefully help me to climb my way back out. And again, if you're in that position right now, I don't think I can adequately say with words how much I wish you were out of this, I guess, and how much knowing that what, oh gosh, tears, I guess, but knowing where I was probably about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, it's, it's a scary, scary place. And I guess the advice that I can give right now and something that is hopefully encouraging is to just keep trudging through. Just, it feels sometimes like you're digging a hole. This is the image that always came to mind when I was going through all of this and when I was journaling and trying to put words to how I was feeling or images to how I was feeling. It felt like I was digging, trying to get out, but what I was really doing was just digging further and further down. And the image that always came to mind as someone who relies heavily on her faith is that image of me digging a hole, me facing down, just digging that hole for myself, trying to get out, thinking I'm going the right way, when in reality, God is leaning over the hole, hand extended, waiting for me just to grasp it so that he can help me out. And it was this image that helped me understand how I was feeling in that moment. And I really, as much as I can understand given my own circumstances compared to your circumstances, which I'm sure are very different than my own and probably way worse than what I was going through, because let's be real, there were so many times that I felt guilty for feeling that way, knowing that so many people have struggles far greater than mine. But just know if you're in that position that this episode's for you to hopefully help you feel a little bit less alone and to maybe give you guys some tips and tricks to implement in your own life. And then also let's make this a two-way street, because I know so many of us are going to struggle with it again. And I'd love what has helped you guys in the past too, or what is helping you right now as you're going through this mental health challenge. So I guess a little bit more of what was going on for me mentally. My experiences had shifted. My external environment had shifted. How I viewed myself, how I lived my life, how I experienced joy, happiness, peace, positivity, all of that shifted about 3 years ago. And I didn't expect it to happen necessarily. I was okay with that shift in external circumstances. I had agreed to that shift in external circumstances. Looking back, and even during, I had this thought that I am going through significant mental health struggles right now. I'm really trying to fight my mind and fight my brain and fight what's happening with all of my neurochemistry, all of my emotions. And I know that it is going to make me stronger. But when you're in that place, you absolutely hate it. It freaking sucks, right? You know that there's going to be this stronger version on the other side, but you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know when that's going to happen. And I think part of that is faith had really helped me to have that perspective, even when I was, I guess, deeper in the pits a little bit, where I always knew that things, and I believe that things work for the good of our world and the good of ourselves and the good of our relationships. And so I have that like deeper belief that helped. But the longer it went on and the more I struggled and the more I kept trying to climb out of that hole, but really digging it further, the less and less I believed it. And that's a really scary place to be. And for someone who had really had a strong relationship in her faith, I started to get angry. I started to get frustrated. I started to ask questions like, why me? Like so many of us probably have. And I think that was actually really healthy. I think being honest in my faith and in my relationship with God was something that really helped me. As someone who strongly believes that God loves me so much and wants the best for me, if I can be honest with him about where I'm at, I think that only helps to build that relationship. So that is, I guess, one of my tips that I learned was not trying to be so positive all the time about the situation that you're in, but being real and letting your faith guide you, but also being honest about where you're at. And that's something that I had pushed away for so long because I used to, I guess, gaslight myself and be like, Kelsey, you don't have it as bad as some people. Like, you have no reason to be angry. And maybe that is true. I mean, I know that so many people have it worse than me. And I know that my situation could not even come close to the struggles that some people face. But for me and for my life, for some reason, that's what really set it off. And so it's okay to validate your own feelings, validate your own anger, and be honest about your relationship with your faith and your relationship with God, and saying, I trust you wholeheartedly but I'm angry right now because I don't understand why I'm having to walk through this, why I'm having to sludge through this. And so that's one of the things that helped me. So again, if you're in that situation right now, if you have been in that situation, I'm sure you've also realized that and understood that, especially if you have a strong faith or a faith in general. It's something that I do think really helped me and probably took me far too long to learn, but being real about where you're at in your struggle really, really helps. So mentally, because I had agreed to this experience and agreed to these changes in my life, I had started to shut myself down whenever I felt happy, peaceful, joyful, anything like that, because I felt like I didn't deserve it. I felt like I needed to keep my nose to the grind and keep pushing, keep hustling, keep just like working so hard, and that I didn't necessarily deserve that happiness or that joy. Over time, I didn't realize I was doing this, but anytime I would feel happiness with anything in life, I would start to put a fence or put a barrier around that emotion and really control it, which we don't want to do. We want to be able to feel all the emotions, both favorable and non-favorable emotions. But I had been putting a fence and a barrier around the max happiness that I could feel. And it started manifesting itself physically. So I could feel it in my chest. I could feel it in my headaches. I could feel things where I noticed myself just blocking some of these emotions. And that's positive ones and also like sadness, anxiety, frustration. I was pushing that down without actually paying attention to it. So the physicality of those emotions and the manifestations of those emotions physically is really what led me to seek therapy and seek professional guidance with this, because it was the first time that I'd really struggled this much intrinsically and internally. I was fighting myself. I was fighting my brain. What's the right thing to do? Where do I push myself? And I really wanted someone else's help to work through that in a healthy way. And for me, again, my faith is a huge part of how I handle certain things and how I live life. And I knew that I wanted a therapist who had a faith-based perspective. And so I went about looking for someone like that. And I know so many of my friends who have different life experiences than me also look for therapists that work with people with their same life experiences, whether you want a female or a male, whether you want someone who has the same cultural background or ethnicity that you do, someone who has the same family life or the same beliefs or the same values. So I really did want that faith-based perspective and that faith-based guidance with who I chose to work with in therapy. And I found an amazing person and someone that I ended up working with for like 18 months. And so I guess if you're going through that and you're struggling to realize like, oh, is this something that someone else can help me with? Yes, I highly recommend reaching out to someone. And again, I feel very blessed that I'm only going through this later on in life. I know plenty of friends and family members that have had to get professional help earlier on in life, and they have way better backgrounds of it than I do. But as someone who had to seek out professional help for mental health struggles in her later 20s, I realize now that they are there to support you, and they truly do support you. And if you don't feel supported, that's the other thing. You don't have to stick with the same therapist. You can try and find someone who you actually feel supported by and who feels like they're guiding you, or who you feel like is guiding you in a positive way. So highly recommend, especially if you are currently going through a mental health struggle, or again, in the future when we're inevitably all going to experience some of these challenges. So I guess my schedule for that, I started out weekly, then every other week, then once a month, and then every few months. So it just sort of, I wanted that consistency and that ability to sort of have this accountability for how I was working and healing my own internal conflict, my own brain. The other thing that really helped me, and something that I still do, is weekly adoration. It's a dedicated prayer time for me that's like an hour a week. I bring my journal, I bring the readings from the week before, I go over it. Sometimes I'll bring headphones to listen to different faith-based messages or different faith-based prayers that I can follow along with. It's really just this dedicated hour that I participate in every week. And I wish I had the consistency every day to do it for an hour, but it's this really dedicated time where I could just journal out my thoughts. I think the important thing to note with dedicated prayer time or dedicated investment into your faith, I look at it as a two-way street. And this has really helped me. A relationship is two ways. Oftentimes with our faith, what happens is we start to ask God or thank God or make it all about us, I guess, and what we can get out of that interaction and that relationship. When in reality, the best relationships are two ways. You both get something from each other a little bit. And this hour a week, sometimes after I would feel like I solved all my problems, like the world was in a better place, like I was in a better place. And then sometimes it was like nothing had changed, like nothing had happened. Sometimes I felt emotions stirring that were a little worse than before. But something that I've realized is it's the act of showing up. It's the act of putting in that effort and consistently communicating with God every single week, no matter if I get something out of it, because that's not true love, right? If you're expecting to get something out of a relationship, that's not true love. True love is showing up even when you don't get something out of it, and building on that relationship and trying to invest in that relationship, knowing that you might not get anything in return. And I think that was something that was very important for me to learn and realize over the last now probably 3 or 4 years that I've been going to weekly adoration, where even if I don't get anything out of it, it's my way of investing in that relationship and showing up and loving and investing into my faith without expectation of anything in return. And yes, it gave me time to write down my thoughts, to pray, which are all good things. But if you go into any prayer time expecting something in return, I feel like we're already entering into that in a faulty mindset a little bit, rather than going into it as like, hey, this is my way of building my faith and building that relationship and making it a two-way street. No matter if I get something in return, that being maybe this positive feeling or this enlightenment of some sort or not, it's still my way of showing God that I care about our relationship. So that was, I guess, my way to do it. There's so many ways to do it, but going to that weekly adoration and having this like weekly prayer time for an hour where I could truly just spend it on our relationship was huge for me. Also, learning how to communicate better. That's probably one of the things I went to therapy for initially, was how do I communicate how I'm feeling without burdening others, and realizing that I can only control what I can control and I can't control how others respond. And so learning how to communicate better and practicing better communication was also huge for me. And again, I know I'm so late to learning all of these things, but if you're also in the same boat, if you're younger than me, if you're older than me, whatever, I hope that some of these things help too. Daily prayer also really helped. And even if that wasn't just like free form, sometimes I'd pray the serenity prayer because, again, I struggle with like control. I wanted to control everything. So the serenity prayer is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I would pray that every morning. I'd pray just different sort of like prayers as like my pre-mealtime prayers, just to like have that, I guess, moment and that dedicated moment to check in and connect with my faith a little bit throughout that whole process, but also even still. And then I started running again. I started running for fun. I started doing movement to help my mental health, which I'd always done that with strength and Pilates-based workouts and just movement in general. But I'd taken out long runs because I typically think of running as a way to increase speed, increase different variables related to my cardiovascular health. Like there was always an objective measurement, when in reality, running can just be fun. You could just go out there and run. And I had never really done that before. I'd always had a goal in mind. But throughout all of this, I realized my heart rate would increase, my blood pressure would increase. All of these things would manifest themselves physically. And running for the sake of running and for the sake of the enjoyment of running was hugely helpful for me. So I wanted to get a little bit vulnerable about mental health this week because I think I mentioned at the beginning, we are going through this exciting change time in my own family, and it's something that we have been excited about for a very long time, but it's also something that creates a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of nervousness within me. And I could sense myself wanting to go back into some of those thought patterns that I had previously, not necessarily that deep pit that I felt like I was in, but being a little bit more negative or not necessarily trusting that this was God's plan for our lives. And so I wanted to talk about it because I've really noticed over the last probably 3-4 weeks that this change has been going on, that my mindset in general has been so much more positive. I've been able to look back and see where God has been working in this process and understand that He will continue to work throughout the rest of this process. And it's something that I don't think I could have done a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I was in this place where I wouldn't have been able to hope or feel that joy or peace with some of the decisions that we've made. I wouldn't have been able to see necessarily how God had been working throughout this process. There was a fog, right? So now that I'm out of that a little bit and working to heal and working to fight and have the tools to be able to help heal my brain a little bit better, I understand and I can see the fruits of my labor. I've been able to see exactly how God has been working in this process. And I truly do trust and feel peace about how he's going to work through the next. And this is why I wanted to bring up this topic today, was because only just recently, this has been a test since going through all of the work that I've been putting in over the last 2 or 3 years, where I now realize, oh, that actually did help. My mind is able to look at things in this new light without feeling despair or feeling this anxiety or lack of being in control. I'm able to stay more hopeful about the process, feel like myself throughout the process, even if it does feel out of my control or bring me some anxiety. I told my sister-in-law the other day, she was texting me and she was like, oh my gosh, that, everything that's going on in y'all's lives is crazy right now. And I was like, for some reason I do feel this peace, and I can only think that that is from God, because my natural wiring is not one towards peace. It is one towards control, and I want to control everything. And right now in this process, it's something that I have no control over. And I feel like overall, I'm just proud of how much work I put in order to be able to handle it. So that's why I wanted to bring it up today, and because I'm fresh in this process and in this change, and I'm just feeling very proud of the hard work that I put in and how I'm handling it now during this sort of test season of excitement, this lack of control, anxiety, nerves, but overall feeling this like joy, peace, happiness, and able to see how God has been working through this process. Something that's also been helping me is this quote that I read somewhere. I wish I could remember where, but it has to do with faith and decisions. I know a lot of us have a lot of decisions to make, whether that's grad school, whether that's classes to take, whether that's different phases in life or job opportunities or internships, whatever it might be. This quote has sort of been going through my head that discernment ends once a decision has been made. And so discerning and thinking, did I do the right thing? Or which route does he want me to take when it comes to my faith? As soon as a decision has been made, that's when discernment ends. So it has helped me to not backtrack and think, why did we choose that? Did we do something wrong? Because once a decision has been made and once you move forward in that process, that's when the new routes present themselves. And most of the time you can reroute from that decision to another way, and he'll guide you in that. But I think that's helped me in this process to understand discernment is over once a decision has been made, so that once you decide, there's no what ifs. Don't go back to the what ifs. Start from that decision and move on from there. So that's really helped me. I don't know if that quote resonates with any of you guys, but hopefully, because it's helped me a lot throughout this process. So I share all of this. I get vulnerable with all of this just to show, I guess, a little bit of my own healing arc, and to hopefully help you guys if y'all are going through this, if you have gone through this before, if you anticipate yourself about to go through something like this, to understand that there are people out there who can help, that healing takes time, and it's okay to put in the effort, even if you don't feel the benefits or the fruits of your labor for, 2-3 years at a time. That a lot of the time, some of the healing comes, and you notice some of the healing when you undergo something similar that got you into that situation in the first place. And yeah, I'm just noticing all of this. I'm just living it in real time. And I wanted to have a little bit of a vulnerable mental health chat with you guys today. I know these are supposed to be fun, girly, casual summer chats, but this has been something that's been on my mind recently, and something that I know a lot of us struggle with. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode today. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you've also gone through your own mental health struggles, I'd love to hear what helps you, because I'm always interested in, I think even if you're not going through a mental health struggle, doing things that are good for your mental health every week, every day is something that's hugely beneficial. So even if you're not going through a struggle, but you have things that help your own mental health, please let me know. I'd love to listen to them. I'd love to hear about them. I'd love to try them in my own life. So I've shared with you guys some of my top, I think 5 today, but if you guys have your own, please, I am wanting to hear them. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys again in the next episode of Wellness Big Sis, the pod.